Here's the Unit 0 practice tests for Math 1. First question, we are adding and subtracting using a number line. So remember that we need to rewrite any double signs. So if you see two symbols next to each other, if we see a plus, plus, we know we're going to rewrite that as a positive. If we see a minus, minus, that's also a positive. When the signs are opposite, that's when we're going to write it as a negative. So looking at A, I see two symbols right next to each other. I see a plus, minus, so we're going to rewrite that as just a minus. So this is 6 minus 2, and we want to show on a number line. So the first number is going to be the starting point. So I'm going to start at 6, and since we're subtracting, that means we're going to go left. So 1, 2, wherever you end up is your answer. So 6 minus 2 is 4. All right, second question, I don't see any double signs. So even though I have -1 minus 4, the symbols are not right next to each other. So now we can go straight to the number line. Remember, we're going to start at the first number, which is -1. And since we're subtracting, we're going to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's -5. For this one down here, again, we don't have any double signs because I don't see two symbols right next to each other. So we're going to start at -3. And since we're adding, that means we're going to go to the right. So we're going to count 8 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So my answer is going to be 5. All right, and the last one here, again, I see this double sign. I see minus, minus, and we know that with minus, 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 our sign is going to be positive. So in this case, we're going to rewrite this as 5 plus 1. So now I'm going to start at 5, and I'm just going to go to the right 1, and that's going to get me to 6. So my final answer is going to be 6. All right, let's look at number 2. So number 2, we are multiplying and dividing, but we want to do this using a multiplication chart. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out the sign of my answer. So the same rules that we have up here follow for multiplication. So if we have if we're multiplying two positive numbers, we know the answer is going to be positive. Two negatives is going to be positive. And then if we have a plus minus, it's going to be negative, or minus plus. So looking at A, we have a negative times a positive. So I know my answer is going to be negative because those signs are opposite. For B, again, I have a positive and a negative, so opposite signs, so my answer is going to be negative. For C, I have a negative and a negative. When the signs are the same, we know my answer is going to be positive. And then in the last case, I have a negative and a negative. Again, two negatives, when we're dividing, become a positive. So now we can use our multiplication chart. So we don't need to worry about the sign anymore because we've already decided what the sign of our answer is going to be. So -5 times 4. So I'm going to look down here. 5 times 4 is going to be 20. So my answer is going to be -20. For B, I have -21. Oh, so this is a division problem. So we're dividing by 3. So we're going to look in our 3 row, and we're going to find the 21. Here's a 21, and I'm going to look up. So my answer is going to be 7. So my answer here, we already know is negative, is going to be -7. All right, the next one's a multiplication problem. We have -3 times -6. We already know that my answer is going to be positive because we have a negative and a negative. So we're going to do 3 times 6. It's going to be 18. All right, and then the last one is a division problem. So we have -72 divided by -8. I already know my answer is going to be positive because it's a negative and a negative. So I'm going to look at my multiplication chart. I'm dividing by 8. So I'm going to look at my row of 8. I'm going to look for 72. Here we have 72. I look up. So my answer is going to be 9. So my answer is going to be positive 9. All right, so now let's take a look at plotting points. So the thing that we want to remember when plotting points is that the first coordinate is always going to be your x-coordinate, and your x-coordinate tells you how far to move right or left. Remember, we're starting at the origin. So we go to the right when x is positive, we go to the left when x is negative. The second number in your coordinate ordered pair is the y value, and that tells you how far we're going up and down. If the number is positive, we're going to be going up. If the number is negative, we're going to be going down. So looking at this first point, we're going to plot A at 5, -2. So remember, we're going to start at the origin to graph this. And since A is positive, we're going to go to the right 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then since Y is negative, I'm going to go down to 1, 2. So my point is going to be right here. So we're going to label that point A. All right, the next point we're plotting as B, which is at 4, 5. So again, we start at the origin. The first number tells us that we're going to be going to the right 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to go up 5 since it's positive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to label that B. The third point we're plotting is C, which is -3, -4. We're starting at the origin. So we're going to go left because it's negative, left 3 units, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to go down 4 units, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, the last coordinate we're plotting is at 3, -5. So starting at the origin, since x is positive, we're going to go right 3, 1, 2, 3. And then the y coordinate is negative, so we're going to go down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, for question number 4, we're writing the coordinates of each point. So let's first find E. E is right here. Okay, so if we're thinking we were starting at the origin, to get to point E, we know we'd have to go to the right 2. So I know that my x value is going to be positive 2. And then I go down 2, so my y value is going to be -2. Another thing you could do is you could look and see what is the x and what is the y, remembering that the x-axis is the one that goes across the horizontal axis. So this is at positive 2, and the y value is at -2. All right, let's look at F. So kind of the same thing. First, we can see what is the x coordinate. So if I look down on the x-axis here, we're on the negative side. So that's 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be -3. And then to get to my point, I would simply go up 1. And since that's positive, that's going to be positive 1. All right, my last point is G. So for G, if we're starting at the origin, to get to G, we don't need to go right or left. We need to stay put, which means my x coordinate is going to be 0. We don't move right or left. We just stay put, and then we just have to go up. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Since I went up, it's going to be a positive 5. Now let's take a look at concept B. So concept B, we're going to be using a calculator. However, I can't pull up a calculator on here, so I'm just going to write out what you would see in your calculator. So remember, to type out an exponent, which is a little number, you're going to use the button that looks like a caret, right? So if we wanted to type in 5 to the, if you type that into your calculator, it would be 5 to the 2nd power. Remember, if we want to do a square root, the button that we press, we have to press 2 buttons. The first button we press is second, and then you're going to press the button that says x squared. All right, so starting with number 5, we're doing 6 to the 2nd power. When you type that in your calculator, 6 caret 2, and that's going to give you 36. All right, if we look at B, when we type that in our calculator, you're going to hit the negative symbol, and remember the negative button has a parentheses around it, then 3 caret 2, that's going to give you a -9. All right, the next one is 5 to the 4th power, so it would be 5 caret 4, and that's going to give you 625. And this last one, you need to make sure you use the parentheses, so parentheses -4, close your parentheses, caret to the 3rd power would give you -64. All right. Doing the next one for 16, remember when we're doing square root, again, we want to make sure we're hitting the second button and then the x squared button. So the first one, when you type this in your calculator, it's going to look like negative with square root and then 16 and then close your parentheses. When you put that in your calculator, you should get -4. And then the last one here, square root of 63. You are going to get a decimal. It does say round to the nearest hundredth. So when you put this in your calculator, you hit the second x squared button, you get the square root, 63. I'm just going to write out a few of the numbers. So 7.9372. So if we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, remember that hundredth is 2 numbers after the decimal, right? So this is our target place. So 93 is a number that's going to be either kept as 93 or we're going to bump it up to 94. So then we look next door. We look at the number next to our target place, which is a 7. And since that's 5 or more, we're going to bump up our number to 94. So rounded to the nearest hundredth, this would be 7.94. All right, let's look at number 7. So 7, we're evaluating in our calculator, and then we're going to use an inequality to compare. So we're either going to be saying that it's greater than or less than. So remember, the alligator eats the bigger number, so the big part should be facing the bigger number. All right, square root of 95 in our calculator. So I'm not going to write out the calculator stuff here. I'm just going to write out the answer. When you put that in your calculator, when we're rounding to the nearest tenth, tenth is one number after the decimal, you would get 9.7. And then 3 squared in your calculator, you should get 9. So that would mean that the square root of 95 is greater than 3 squared. All right, looking at B, negative 2 parentheses to the 4th power. When you put that in your calculator, you should get 16. And then when we do negative square root of 70, you should get negative, rounded to the nearest tenth, would be negative 8.4. So in that case, negative 2 to the 4th power is going to be greater than negative square root of 70. All right, for number 8, we need to put these expressions from least to greatest. So first thing we need to do is we need to evaluate them. So we need to figure out what they are when we put them in our calculator. The first number is already written. It's already been evaluated, so we don't need to do anything there. The second one, we're going to do negative 2 to the 3rd power, which is negative 8. The next one we're going to do is the square root of 12, which is about 3.5. I'm rounding to the nearest tenth. The next one is negative 3 to the 4th power, which is 81. The next one is negative square root of 45, which is negative 6.7. And the last one is 90 to the 0 power. 90 to the 0 power is 1. Actually, anything to the 0 power is 1. Okay, so now we're going to put these in order from least to greatest. So what I'm going to do first is I'm actually just going to highlight all the negative numbers because we know that all of the negative numbers should be the numbers that go on the lower end because negative numbers are small. So let's look at these negative numbers. Remember that the bigger the number, the more negative it is. So what I mean by that is negative 10.75 is the largest number if we ignore the signs. That means that's going to be the smallest number. So that's going to go first, negative 10.75. Okay, the next one we're going to do is going to be the negative 8. So that's negative 2 to the 3rd power. The next one we're going to do is negative square root of 45. So now we can look at the positive numbers, and now we know that 1 would be the next number. Which is, let me write the original number. That's going to be 90 to the 0 power. And then the next one would be the square root of 12. And then lastly, negative 3 to the 4th power.